Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is StepsBasic, and welcome back to my community show. So, today we are going to do the Bioshock review. I know it's been a little while since I finished Bioshock, and I said I would be doing the review next, but I kind of fell off because I was trying to remember everything, and honestly, I can barely remember the first game, which kind of sucks. I might want to play that one again, but at the same time, I remember the key points and the important bits of it. And I don't remember characters' names other than Atlas, Andrew, Ryan. I think the main character's name was Jack, but that's fine. Also semi-casual today because it's funny because it's cool enough outside that the AC won't turn on, but in this room it gets really warm, so we're not going to be putting on the jacket for today. It's fine. It's neither here nor there. I'd still get to wear the cool shirt. It's cool. Anyway, so Bioshock. Bioshock was a phenomenal series. I loved it. There were issues, obviously, but let's talk. The first game introduced us to the world of Bioshock, introduced us to Rapture, and the interesting quality of it, and how it was composed of these great minds who thought, let's get away from the world and move down below the ocean and have our own life and our own society and everything. One sec, I gotta put on deodorant. That in and of itself was interesting enough to draw me into the game, but then we start factoring in all the psychological stuff, i.e., the would you rathers, and of course, would you kindlies, not would you rathers, the would you kindly section, which, once you get to the end of it, it's like, oh yeah. And it was funny because even throughout the game, before I even knew really what was going on, every time Atlas was like, would you kindly? I'm like, oh, would you kindly shut up? And it was annoying me at first. It's like, oh, but I get it now at the end. And so I thought that was a fascinating little twist there. Like I was a puppet and I had to break my strings, as it were. And the whole idea of the little sisters and the morality system where you could be evil and harvest them all, or you could save them. And of course, being me, I had to save them all. But I do kind of wish there was a little bit more to saving Rapture itself, purging the splice out of the splicers, as it were, making them, come back to human. But at the very least, I got to save the kids. And that was cool. And of course, that introduced us to Tannenbaum, who we got to meet again in the second game. And the second game, I think, took what made the first game good and improved it. Now, the one complaint I have between the two games was that the combat felt really clunky. Now, it wasn't anything like I couldn't get used to it. It was clunky. It was a bit of an older game, which makes sense, So it makes sense, But, having that sort of aspect really kind of made it so I felt really awkward in the game. But the stories itself were enough to keep me going. So even where I felt like getting used to the controls and everything was going to be difficult, getting into the story made me want to and not really care so much about the combat and everything. And so moving into the second one, we're playing a big daddy who has in a way formed a sense of sentience. And I really love that aspect of it because it's like, I'm different. I'm the same as them, but I'm different because I want to protect the kids and I have to protect the kids. But also, I'm not just a mindless killing machine who, sees a threat and destroys it. And that added an interesting layer to the morality system that I liked in the first. And that added an interesting layer to the morality system that I really liked in the first one, because now you have enemies that you can spare. And I thought that was so cool. When it first happened, it's like the morality was very cut and dry. There's no point in killing Grace here, so let's not kill Grace. And then the second one is like, oh, this guy betrayed your daughter, and that's why she's a little sister. So it's like, yeah. But at the same time, it's still a little bit more cut and dry because he did a bad thing, but that does not mean you can qualify yourself as a bad person by killing him. And then come to the third one. And that one was a weird conundrum because to me, I think the morally right thing to do was to kill him. But at the same time, I can see the justification for not. Because it's like looking at the thing, it's like when he was alive, when he was himself, he wanted himself to be killed as he was. And then when you start factoring in, he's not the same person anymore. He's different now. So killing the original guy in this form didn't make sense. So now you're faced with this moral conundrum of that guy wanted himself to be put out of his misery, but this guy isn't in misery. I mean, he is kind of, but not. So it's like, wow. And I fell for that too. I went back and I fixed it, but like I fell for it. Because it's like, I'm going to do it because I think it's what the right thing to do. But then I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, is it the right thing to do? It wasn't the right thing to do because they had a trophy. And you saw it when you got to play as little sister, which I thought was really freaking interesting. You know, seeing the world through their eyes. And it's like, oh my God, that's so cool. It looks so different and pretty and cute and calm. But then it's not. And then you see how the little sisters are celebrating everything he's done. And then one of them's like, oh, he killed this guy. It's like, I shouldn't have done that. I really shouldn't have done that. Because there are, like I even justified it as, like, talking about how it was, like, not a matter of, it was a matter of doing what I thought was the right thing. Because that's what the guy originally wanted, but now he's not the same guy, and that was where I lost my trophy for one thing. But that's where I kind of lost the argument. And it's like looking at it through the way I played it and the way the young lamb Eleanor, the way Eleanor reacted in the end when she was talking about how she watched me and she knew how I operated and everything, and she learned how to do it by the way I learned to do it, by healing the little sisters and sparing most of the bad guys. In the end, she ended up sparing her mother, and I was like, I taught her to be a good person. That was great. I loved it. And so overall, that one was like just stupendous and great, and I really loved it. And that one is story-wise, it's my favorite of the three, was 2. And then we moved into Bioshock Infinite, where they refined the combat to the point where it was smooth as butter. They included new aspects, new mechanics, where you could jump on the rails and ride around and shoot people that way. They limited the amount of vigors you got instead of calling them plasmids. They're called vigors because it's a different parallel universe. And of course, you know, going through it, you're like, okay, this isn't the same universe as Rapture. And once you get to the point where I finally realized, oh, this is parallelity, it's like, oh, it all makes sense. We don't exist within the Rapture universe right now. We exist within the Infinite universe, or, well, the Bioshock Infinite universe. And only one person exists within the Infinite. Well, I guess 3, because we can't forget about the Lutaces, because they exist in the universe too. Infinite universe too. But that muddied up, I think, the storyline. And in my opinion, the way they talked about how it was always one guy and always one girl, and they talked about that, it just made the events of the first 2 games seem, I want to say pointless, but not really pointless, but it did definitely make it feel as a more unimportant, because it was just part of the cycle. And the end of Bioshock Infinite was supposed to result in the breaking of the cycle, where I sacrificed myself to, you know, not become Comstock. However, that does kind of still create a problem, because I am not the infinite Booker, as it were, in that game. And we see it in the Burial at Sea DLCs, where she talks about how she's going through and eliminating Comstocks, failing to realize that in an infinite series of universes, there's an infinite number of Comstocks and an infinite number of Comstocks that are good, or at least not as evil as they were, as the one that we encountered and killed. And that in and of itself makes her journey seem pointless too, and I didn't like that. And of course, we see her struggling with that morality in the final closing moments of the game, of the Burial at Sea DLC. It was definitely an interesting story, and I'm not going to deny that. But unfortunately, I kind of wish that it existed outside of the Bioshock universe. Like if it would have just been like Columbia or something, instead of, you know, calling it Bioshock, because to me it cheapened the other games. Now, being made by the same studio and say you want it to be within the boundaries of Bioshock, you could have still had the game play out exactly how it went, but that would have made it seem less cheap to the other two games less cheap by comparison, because this isn't necessarily Bioshock. It is Columbia Infinite, or you know, Elizabeth Infinite, however you want to call it. Plus, I was not prepared for. I mean, I should have been, honestly. Early 1900s, but the blatant racism just made me sick every 5 seconds. Having it thrown in my face, I'm like, dude, stop. It's disgusting. Now, I have to acknowledge that it was made a little bit in a different time, but not the very far away. And it was set in a much different time, but at the same time, it's like I'd round the corner and see slurs written about Jewish people on the walls, and I'm like, oh, I just want to destroy it. But of course I couldn't. It did. What was funny, because I wasn't too happy about the way they played the rebellion in the story. Don't get me wrong, I understand it, and I see like that's the sort of thing that we always see. It's not a change of how things are done, it's just a change of who's doing it, sort of thing. And I understand where that comes from. You see that a lot in the world. But at the same time, I'm playing an escapist fantasy game, and I kind of wanted to see it work out. But then in the Burial at Sea, they made it a bit different, where they're like, okay, so the Luteces told Daisy to be a jerk. She was open and willing to do it, but it still was kind of their guiding hand that did it. And at the same time, it's just like, so it was funny, because where I had the issue of the gameplay being a little clunky, but the story being fantastic, won me over in the first two games. This one, it was the reverse. The gameplay was so fun, so smooth and everything, but then the story was kind of lacking. And I shouldn't say it was lacking. Because it was well told, but it was a story that I didn't like. And I need to acknowledge that is a personal preference. I was not a fan of the story. That doesn't mean the story was bad. But it did feel like, it just felt slimy to me. And I don't like slimy. And it was filled with it did have a few cop-outs and stuff like that I wasn't a fan of. Like, I think they put the Luteces in there just to kind of justify what they did with Daisy's character. And the whole, killing the kid at the end there. But, like, that felt like a cheap cop-out to me, but especially since nothing else really became of that. You know what I mean? There was no way, like, Elizabeth could have fixed that. She couldn't stop it, or, like, hey, here, have this. I'm going to stab you in the back here real quick, so this will make her think that you killed me. But then, no, they didn't do anything else with it. But overall, like, if anyone were to ask me, do you recommend this game? I would say, heck yeah, man. All three of the games, play them out. Play the DLC. Play everything about them, because they are fun. They're inventive. They have a interesting story, interesting concepts. And like I said, Bioshock Infinite, if you played it as a standalone rather than tied into the first two games, it would have been far cleaner, as it were. Far more standalone-ish, but still within, you just had it there, but you know what I mean. And so it was an interesting story. Just when coupled with the Bioshocks, it really just was not to my taste. Aesthetically, beautiful, cartoony, but I kind of like that. I'm kind of leaning more away from the hyper-realistic types of games and stuff. So the cartoony nature of it really kind of felt better. You have the large muscular dudes with the tiny little heads, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, and I like that. Aesthetically, it's very pleasing. Gameplay, with the first two games, you kind of have to get used to how slow everything moves. You probably adjust the settings and whatnot to get it to work better, but for the most part, it was like a little clunky. And I did get used to it very quickly, but there is that little bit of a learning curve to it that was kind of annoying. And with the third game, gameplay is phenomenal. Just nailed it right on the head. And seamlessly tying in your plasma or your vigor use to your attacks and everything. Like, one of my favorites was using the bucking bronco to launch people in the air and then blasting them out of the air with the shotgun. That was awesome. I felt so powerful. It was great, which is kind of what you need to aim for when it comes to that sort of thing. You know what I mean? But yeah. So overall, yeah, play them. Great games. Amazing. Give them, I don't know, you want to do the out of 10 thing? I guess 8 out of 10. Story lacking in some places, gameplay lacking in others, but overall, really good game. I definitely recommend it. But yeah, so much fun. And I may end up playing through to get the completionist, trophy on my own on them. I actually played a little bit through. Like I said, I fixed the mistake I made in Bioshock 2 and went back and spared the tank guy's life, which was cool. Didn't really affect the outcome of the game at all, though. It was still pretty cool, though. But yeah, that's it for my Bioshock review. Quick, easy, dirty, awesome. Play it. So let's move on to announcements. We are moving our way through Spider-Man. I am being incredibly slow with it, but I'm still enjoying the heck out of it. And that's probably why I'm moving so slow with it, because it's got everything I want. Fun, easy to learn mechanics. Whipping through the city gives you a kind of movement fun. Like I said, it reminds me of Prototype. I actually might have cut that part out of the video, but it reminds me of Prototype in how smooth it is to move around the city and how fun that is. It's a little slower than Prototype was, but it's cool. Plus all the collectibles, side missions, interesting things, rebuilding new suits. It literally has everything I want in it. So, I'm moving on and I'm going to get there. Starting next week, I'm going to be uploading solely to this channel. And I'm going to do one more video on the main channel to let everyone know there that I'm going to be uploading here. But I'm tired of dealing with the two channels, and I just kind of want to focus on the one. Nothing's getting deleted or moved from the first channel, Phil's Family. So, all that stuff is still going to be there. So if you want to watch it, it's still going to be there. I'm still going to have the link in the description below. But I'm just moving on. It's going to be strictly, this channel alone. And as such, I'm probably going to drop the term gaming from my channel title, but it's still going to be a primarily gaming channel. It's just going to have an extra upload in the morning with the joke that comes from Phil's Family. It's a dad joke, short formats, and I think that'll help to grow my channel, boosting views and give me more watch time, which is the end goal of it, really. And that, coupled with that, might actually see me succeed in the world, So, just taking steps to improve my channel. And if it doesn't work, I'll go back to uploading those back to Phil's Family. But for now, that's what we're going to be looking at. Yeah, that's it. And that's going to be it for us for today. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of The Community Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, just go and poke that like button for me. If you'd like to see more from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And of course, as always, you're more than welcome to leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And when I can, if I can. All that jazz. And tune in next time when we talk about another topic at another time. And until then,